Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Is Dhananjaya there? Yeah. And you want to get my Bhagavad Gita? Janmad yasya yato niviyad ittaratas charte swavikyaswara.
Janmad yasya yatam vayaritaratas chate swavikyaswara.
Tene brahma hirdaya adhikavaye muyanti yatsurayaha.
Tenne Brahma Rudaya Adhikavaye Mojanti Jasuraya.
Tejo varimidam yata vinimayo yatra trisargumesha.
Tejo Varimrida Jata Vinimayo Jatra Trisagumrisya.
Dhamna svena sada nirasta kuhakam satyam param dhimahi.
Dhamna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of
O
Vasudeva.
all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
For my respectful obeisances unto you.
Our from my respectful obeisances unto
I
you.
meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute
And
truth.
the primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all
The
causes.
creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is
Thank you.
directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there's no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond
It
him.
is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji,
It's she only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of
the
Brahmaji,
original living being.
the original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion,
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into
as one is
illusion.
bewildered by the illusory representations
As one is bewildered by the illusory
of
representations
water seen in fire or land seen with water.
of waters in the fire, of lands in the water.
Only because of him do the material universes,
Only because of him do the material universes,
temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature,
temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of
appear
nature,
factual although they are unreal.
appear factual, although they are unreal.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri
who is
Krishna,
eternally existent in the transcendental abode,
who is eternally existent in his transcendental
which is
abode,
forever free from the illusory representations of the material
which is
world.
forever free from the illusory
I
representations.
meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute
Dharma
truth.
projita kaitravatra,
Dharma Prujita Kaitavutra,
paramo nirmatsaranam satam,
Paramo Nirmasharanam,
vedyam vastavam atra vastu,
Vedyam Vastavam Astra Vastu,
shivadam tapa trayon mulanam,
Shivadam Tapu Trayomulanam,
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite,
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni
Kim va
Krite,
purer Ishwaraha,
Kim va Paririshvara,
Sadyo Hridi Avarudyate Tra,
Sadyurudya Varidya Titra,
Krite Bihi Sususabhistakshanat,
Kritivhi Shishu Suvista Kyanat,
completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
completely rejecting all religious activities and material
This
motivated.
Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavad Puran propounds the highest truth,
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in the
The
heart.
highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth, the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold
This
miseries.
beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in its maturity
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled with the great sage Vyasadeva is
is
maturity.
sufficient in itself for God realization.
Is sufficient itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other scripture?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
by this culture of knowledge,
by this culture of
the
knowledge,
Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam,
Nigama kalpatoro kalitam phalam,
mukad amrita dravya samyatam,
Sukamukhadam Ritadrava Sangitam,
pibata Bhagavatam rasamalayam,
Pibata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam,
ahur aho raskabu vibhavukaha.
Mura Horasikabu
O
Vibhavuka.
expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad
The
Bhagavatam.
mature fruit of the desired true Vedic literatures.
The mature for the desired truth, the Vedic
It
literatures,
emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
is emanated from the lips of Shishukadeva Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this food has become even more tasteful.
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberated souls.
Srinvatam Swakata Krishna,
Shambhatam Swakata Krishna,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Hridyantaksto Hi bhadrani
Vidyantastu Hyabadrani
vidunati suhitsatam.
Vidunoti Suritsatam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from Vedic
or to
literature,
hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
is itself righteous activity.
it is self-righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
And for one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna who is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's heart,
acts as a best wishing friend,
acts as the best wishing
and
friend,
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and purifies the devotee who constantly engaged in hearing of him.
Nastapresu abhadresu
Nasta Praishwa Bhadrishu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Se
bhagavati utamasloke
Bhagavati Uttama
bhaktir
Sloke
bhavati naistiki.
Bhakti Bhavati Nastiki.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, devotee develop natural, dormant, transcendental
As he
knowledge.
hears more about the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Bhagavatam,
and from the devotees,
and from the
he
devotees,
becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in devotional service of the Lord.
Tadarajastamo bhava
Tadarajastamo bhava
kamalobhadayaschaye
Kamalobhadayasya
cheta etaranavidam
Chitaitayaranavidam
stvam sattve prasidati.
Stitam sarve prasidati.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional service,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion of
and
ignorance.
thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
And thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasana manaso
Evam prasannamanas
bhagavad bhakti yogataha
Bhagavad Bhakti Yoga
bhagavad tattva vijnanam
Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam
mukta sangasya jayate.
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in his position of pure
becomes
goodness,
enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotional
and
service,
understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate hridaya grantis
Vidyate Hridaya Grantis
chidyante sarvasamsaya
Yante Sarva Samshaya
siyante jasya karmani
Yante Sacha Karmani
drishta evat manishware.
Drusta Evan
Thus,
Manishwari.
bhakti yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
Thus the Bhakti Yoga serves the heart of the material affection
and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of Samsam Samagrama,
understanding of the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead.
understanding the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotees in
Therefore,
Krishna
only by
consciousness
hearing from Krishna, from his devotees in Krishna consciousness,
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, verse number 16. Mana swabudya malaya niyamya chetra gyastaitam niyayetam atmani
Kitra Gyaitam Ninayetam Atmani
atmanam atmanyavarudya daidiro
Atmanam Atmanyavarudya Diro
labda pasantir virameta krityat.
Labdo Pashanti Virameta Krityat.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Thereafter, the yogi should merge his mind by his unalloyed intelligence into the living entity, and then merge the living entity into the supersoul. And by doing this, the fully satisfied living entity becomes situated in the supreme stage of satisfaction, so that he ceases from all other activities. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The functions of the mind are thinking, feeling, and willing. When the mind is materialistic or absorbed in material contact, it acts for material advancement of knowledge, destructively ending in discovery of nuclear weapons. But when the mind acts under spiritual urge, it acts wonderfully for going back home, back to Godhead, for life in complete bliss and eternity. Therefore, the mind has to be manipulated by good and unalloyed intelligence. Perfect intelligence is to render service unto the Lord. One should be intelligent enough to understand that the living being is, in all circumstances, a servant of the circumstances. Every living being is serving the dictates of desire, anger, lust, illusion, insanity, and enviousness. All materially affected. But even while executing such dictations of different temperaments, he is perpetually unhappy. When one actually feels this and turns his intelligence to inquiring about it from the right sources, inquiring about what? Why he's unhappy. He gets information of the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Instead of serving materially for the above-mentioned different humors of the body, the living entity's intelligence then becomes freed from the unhappy illusion of materialistic temperament, and thus, by unalloyed intelligence, the mind is brought into the service of the Lord. The Lord and his service are identical, being on the absolute plane. Therefore, the unalloyed intelligence and the mind are merged into the Lord, and thus the living entity does not remain a seer himself, but becomes seen by the Lord transcendentally. When the living entity is directly seen by the Lord dictates to him to act according to his desire, and when the living entity follows him perfectly, the living entity ceases to discharge any other duty for his illusory satisfaction. In his pure, unalloyed state, the living being attains the stage of full bliss, labdo pasanti, and ceases all material hankerings. Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavani Ki Jai. So this purport has very subtle points in it that are difficult to understand for most people. And one needs to understand what is meant by, thus the living entity does not remain a seer himself, but becomes seen by the Lord transcendentally. When the living entity is directly seen by the Lord dictates to him to act according to his desire, and when the living entity follows him perfectly, the living entity ceases to discharge any other duty for his illusory satisfaction. This is an extremely highly philosophical point, and it's been discussed in depth by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And it's called technically, it's called the difference between Goloka Darshana and Jagad Darshana. In other words, the difference between Goloka Darshana, meaning spiritual vision, and Jagat Darshana, which means material vision. And it's also summarized as Drig Drishya Vichara. Drig Drishya Vichara means the analysis of the seer and the seen. Vichara means analysis. So, first one has to understand the Sanskrit word. So, the first Sanskrit word is drasta. It means the seer. And the second Sanskrit word is drishya, the seen. So, this is a fundamental question discussed by the Mayavadis in particular, and the Vaishnavas. And there's a world of difference between their understanding of this Drig Drishya Darshana, or Drig Drishya, or who is the seer and who is the seen. So in material education, in material life, we are taught to be the seer. And whatever we see is meant for our enjoyment. So when a person comes to the temple to see the deity, he or she is not actually seeing the deity. what they're seeing is like in normal life, an object of enjoyment. So that type of seeing was condemned by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And I'll give you an example. To many who came to Srila Saraswati Thakur with the premature and immature hope that he would show them God, he would reply, don't try to see God, but try to act in such a way that he will want to see you. This is a quote that Prabhupada also gives of his guru's teachings. A Gaudiya article entitled Venu O Vapu clarified this point. One who asks a guru to show him Bhagavan can never really be attracted to the sweetness of Krishna's flute, for which all Vani emanates, or from which all Vani emanates. So when Brahma was enlightened by Krishna, when he was meditating for a long, long period of time to find out what is his purpose in life, he did not see the material creation. It had not taken place yet, or it was in an indefinite state. So he didn't see a mother or father. So he was confused. Who am I? And what is my purpose? So then he heard the flute of Krishna and he became enlightened. And here again he's saying, one who asks the guru to show him Bhagavan, or to show him Krishna, can never really be attracted to the sweetness of Krishna's flute, from which all Vani, all transcendental words, emanate. But those who genuinely want to serve the form of Godhead request a guru the following: by your instructions, please correct and purify me, and give me eyes by which I may actually see. Godhead must be seen first through the ears. First Vani, then Vapu. The ears prepare the eyes. So if we try to see with the eyes, which is what we're taught to do in modern world, we're not actually seeing. Because when we see with our eyes, without having heard how to see by Guru and Acharyas, we see with the desire to enjoy. And we see whatever we perceive as the object of our enjoyment. So therefore, when one comes to the temple and they want to see the deities, if they come with this jagat darshan, or the idea of seeing with worldly vision, they act as the seer and Krishna as the seen, or they are the enjoyer and Krishna is the enjoyed. So they're not actually seeing Krishna. They're simply seeing another object of enjoyment, as they, like going to a movie, or watching television, or going to a play, or going to a concert, or watching a football game. They are the seer, enjoyer, and what they see is the enjoyed. So, therefore, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur instructs, he says, I see the statue. This kind of thinking is in the spirit of enjoyment, whereas the deity sees me, my uncovered pure self, is deity darshan. If in the same way that I see a movie, drama, or gymnastic display, or hear a song, I think, I can see the deity with my eyes and fathom him by my intelligence, such an attempt will be on the material platform. one will derive no benefit from such inclinations not meant for satisfying the Lord's senses. Faith in the Lord entails not having faith in mundane enjoyment or renunciation. If one has faith in this world, then that is bhoga, enjoyment. The objects of the world are for my enjoyment. Such a mentality is due to not having initiation and spiritual knowledge. This is all a lecture from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur given on 10th of November 1936, which is about a month and a half before he left the world. Worldly people are completely different from devotees. Difficulties occur when one thinks that he who is to be served should serve oneself. Difficulties occur when one thinks that he with a capital H, who is to be served, meaning Krishna, should serve oneself, should serve the person that's seeing. O Lord, take notice of me. I am coming to collect dues from you in the form of dharma, artha, kama, moksha for sense gratification. And this is the person who's seeing the Lord. Hiding this inner intention, a person says, Jagannatha Swami, Nayana Patagami, Bhavatu me. O Lord of the universe, be visible to me. And other such delirious karma kandiya words. Oh my God. This is not bhakti. I went and saw the holy place. I went and saw the tree. I went and saw Jagannatha. I went and saw the sadhu, bestowing on them a degree. I have dismissed them and come here. All of this is a matter of enjoyment and cannot at all be called service. If the consideration of who am I has not entered the heart, and if sambandha jnana concerning my eternal object of worship never arises, then how will shraddha and saranagati develop? Shraddha means faith, and saranagati means surrender, develop. Without faith, one cannot have darshana of the Lord or his devotee. Instead, malice and envy will appear. Why envy? One will become envious when another person rises higher than himself. In the opening of Bhagavatam, Bhagavata Dharma is called the Dharma of those sadhus who are without envy. All human, so that's the second verse of the Srimad Bhagvatam, first canto. Nirmatsaranam satam. This Bhagavatam is meant for people who are not envious. So then it says, where's our reading from? 1 second. Oh, yeah. Worldly people are completely different from devotees. Difficulties occur when one thinks that he who is to be served should serve oneself. O Lord, take notice of me. I am coming to collect dues from you in the form of dharma, artha, kama, moksha for sense gratification. Hiding this inner intention, a person says, Jagannatha Swami, Nayana Patagami, Bhavatu me. O Lord of the universe, be visible to me. And other such delirious karma kandiya words. This is not bhakti. I went and saw the holy place. I went and saw the tree. I went and saw Jagannatha. I went and saw the sadhu, bestowing on them a degree. I have dismissed them and come here. All of this is a matter of enjoyment and cannot at all be called service. If the consideration of who am I has not entered the heart, and if sambandha jnana concerning my eternal object of worship never arises, then how will shraddha and saranagati develop? Without faith, one cannot have darshana of the Lord or his devotee. Instead, malice and envy will appear. Why envy? One will become envious when another person rises higher than himself. In the opening of Bhagavatam, Bhagavata Dharma is called the Dharma of those sadhus who are without envy. All humanity is careering around only with the concept of Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, but the means for attaining such goals are not given in the Bhagavatam. Therein one finds only discussion of devotion to the Lord meant for his dedicated devotees. So the Bhagavatam is not dealing with Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. It's talking about service to the Lord. But the means for attaining such goals, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, are not given in the Bhagavatam. Therein one finds only, or in the Bhagavatam, one finds only discussion of devotion to the Lord, meant for his dedicated devotees. If I become slack in this understanding, I will waste my time in material knowledge derived from the senses. If the consciousness of serving wakens, rather than considering oneself the object of service, one can slash all the wickedness imbibed from father, mother, and mundane relatives. Forgetting that the Lord is the enjoyer, one enters samsara. She is called Durga Devi, who, as the shadow energy of the Lord, disturbs us, makes us fools, and entrances us with Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. By the Lord's will, she thus dazes us. By accepting the shelter of this shadow energy, there can be no good fortune. One must take shelter of the possessor of that energy. Daivihi esa gunamai mama maya dharayaya mam eviya prapadyante mayamitam tarantite. This divine energy of mine, Krishna says, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome, or more precisely, impossible to overcome by the living entity. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. Sarvadharmam prityaja mamekam saranam braja aham tvam sarvapapepyo moksisami masucha. So this is all Bhaktisiddhanta's lecture, right? Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. See, this is why it's said that non-devotees cannot understand Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. And that includes the Mayavadis. And that includes anybody who thinks that they are the seer and that Krishna is the seen. The seer means they are the enjoyer, and Krishna is just another object of enjoyment. And continuing with Bhaktisiddhanta's lecture, he says, persons absorbed in service to the Lord destroy their samsara, whereas those disinclined to serve the Lord increase their samsara. Those who drift in this world have no time for hearing about service to the Lord. Even if they make a pretense of hearing, they do so according to their own viewpoint. If they do not like what they hear, they reject it outright. They do not give priority to the topic of the Lord's service. They think that their present-day needs are more important. They consider it better for an intelligent person to spend his time hearing mundane poetry. Like, for example, Hindus love to hear the poetry of Kabir, which is mundane poetry. But they'll sit there for hours and taste that mundanity. Right? Kabir they think they'd have temples for Kabir. See, the Muslims don't make temples for Kabir or for Sridhar Sai Baba, who both were Muslims, right? But the Hindus make temples for Kabir and Sridhar Sai Baba and others. You see, it's very, very interesting. But they're not actually devotees. They are, okay, there's some kind of sadhu, let's say, but they're not really pure sadhus. But yet, they baffle people. They put people into some kind of illusion that they have some deep-seated wisdom or truth. And so therefore, this is called, they spend their time hearing mundane poetry. What right do we have to accept service from others? But in spite of that, we think, let the whole universe serve me. And I use the river water and fruit from the tree, but have no connection with the Lord. If one wants to know, say, in other words, I can go to Safeway or some health food store and buy an organic mango, and it's for my enjoyment. So in other words, I use the river water and the fruit from the tree, but have no connection with the Lord. If one wants to know about the Lord, he must approach a devotee of the Lord. One cannot bypass the proper channel. Ordinary person, this is still his lecture. Ordinary persons and kanista adhikaris cannot comprehend who is serving the Lord and who is not. Rather, they have the inclination to oppose those who serve the Lord because the service attitude and behavior of a devotee does not mix well with worldly so-called moral or immoral conduct. Materialists disparage devotees of the Lord, understanding that they are not instruments for the materialist's satisfaction and pleasure. In another lecture, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati says, those with contaminated intentions cannot worship the transcendent Lord. Their entire way of thinking is quite different from that of the pure-hearted. The contamination is desire for dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Those who buy a ticket of dharma, artha, kama, moksha do not buy a ticket to the terminal station of prema, or pure love of Krishna. They revolve throughout the universe or otherwise accept impersonalistic suicide as the ultimate end. Even if they do buy a ticket of prema, they break journey in the middle, seeing the objects obtainable through dharma, artha, kama, moksha. They try to attain them. So, this is called dig drishya vichara, an analysis of the seer and the seen. Srila Saraswati Thakur demonstrated dig drishya vichara when at Sri Chaitanya Mata he was once standing at the doorway of the inner sanctum looking toward the deities of Shri Guru Gauranga, Gandharvika Giridhari. That's their deities in the Gaudiya Mat. You can see them today. That temple is not far from Mayapur temple. Since Srila Saraswati Thakur was not wearing his spectacles, an accompanying disciple suggested that perhaps he was unable to properly see the deities. Srila Saraswati Thakur smiled and said, we should not think of the Supreme Lord as an object of our vision. Instead, we should meditate on how we can acquire some qualification to become worthy objects of his, meaning Krishna's, vision. We should consider whether he, meaning Krishna, wants to see us and reveal himself to us. Following the example of Lord Chaitanya, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati took darshana of Jagannath in Puri from a distance, from behind the Garuda Stamba at the entrance of the temple. He explained, we will stand behind our Guru, Garuda. Jagannatha will look at Garuda because Garuda is his devotee. Then he will also cast his merciful glance upon us. After once taking darshan in this way, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati expounded or explained. Jagannatha is not drishya, meaning the seen. He is drasta, the seer. Only when a jiva is wholly free from the conception of himself being drasta, the seer, and when he is fully situated in the understanding of himself as drishya, the seen, of Jagannatha, and to be enjoyed by him, then only can the jiva remain sevan mukhe, engaged in devotion, and with eyes of love actually have darshana of Jagannatha. As long as we think, I shall see Jagannatha, then we shall not see him, but only wood, stone, an object described in Buddhist literature, or an antique handless statue that is an object of our enjoyment. Eyes of flesh can never chalk out the Satchitananda Vigraha, the transcendental form of the Lord. Only persons who realize themselves as drishya, whose eye, meaning the seen, and whose eyes see by hearing from Shastra or by chanting the holy names, may have darshan of the Satchitananda reality. On another occasion, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, one who sees must do so with bhakti. A pure devotee is a servant of Bhagavan, and non-devotees are those with extraneous desires, like karmis, jnanis, yogis, and the rest. If in the mood of an enjoyer we go to see Jagannatha, regarding him as an object of our enjoyment, then we will simply see a maimed wooden doll and return. Some will say, Jagannatha is armless Rama, a wooden doll. Others consider him a wooden mannequin with spirit inside. When a devotee requested of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, be merciful to me, I want to see Bhagavan in this life, he was reproved, he was, in other words, chastised. Will you see Bhagavan, or will Bhagavan see you? For your own satisfaction, you want to see Bhagavan. This is not the correct attitude. Thus again, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was insinuating that simply an impression on the retina, that's the part of the eye that perceives the object, is not sufficient for seeing the Supreme Lord. To actually see him, one must serve the Guru and be awarded divine vision. As Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati insisted, the path to see God is by service, inclined subservience to the Guru, who is transparent representative of the Parampara, and by waiting for and expecting the mercy of Krishna. Srila Saraswati Thakur emphasized that hearing from devotees is more important than independently reading Shastra or attempting to see the Lord directly. He would cite Shrutekshita Pataha, the process of seeing by hearing, and explain. Bhaktisiddhanta says, vision of Krishna can be attained only through the medium of the ear, by hearing Harikatha from pure Vaishnavas. End of quote. When a man told him, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, while sitting on the riverside yesterday, I saw Krishna. Srila Saraswati Thakur asked him, did you not also see Maya? If you are still seeing Maya, it means you did not see Krishna. You must have seen a ghost. The test of seeing Krishna is to no longer be interested in Maya. Anyone can say he has seen Krishna, but Rupa Goswami says, Smeram Bangi Traya Parichittam Sachi Vistirna Dishtim. My dear friend, if you are attached to your worldly friends, do not look at the smiling face of Govinda as he stands on the bank of the Yamuna at Keshidgata. Casting sidelong glances, he places his flute to his freshly blossoming lips. His transcendental body, bending in three places, appears very bright in the moonlight. So, end of quote. So, if you are still attached to Maya, you could not have seen Govinda. For if you had really seen Govinda, you could no longer remain attached to Maya. End of quote. So, if you are still attached to Maya, you could not have seen Govinda. For if you had really seen Govinda, you could no longer remain attached to Maya. So, these are all statements by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to understand the difference between the seer and the seen. Now, if you go on the internet, look up the seer and the seen, you'll see page after page of Mayavadi's wrong interpretation of it. And ultimately, they want to merge the seer, the seen, and the object of vision all into one. And that's why they want basically eliminate Krishna, eliminate the material world, and and eliminate your own person or personality, and just merge everything into one homogeneous blob, or a homogeneous false construct. So we'll read one more thing. And in Puri, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur commented similarly to a disciple who, having gone for darshan of Jagannath, arrived at the end of his, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's kata, or class, in the mata, in the temple, a lecture in which he had expounded on the actual meaning of Jagannatha Darshana. And Bhaktisiddhanta said, "Even now you are very late. Even now you are wandering here and there, going to see Jagannatha through these eyes. If you do not first attain spiritual knowledge through the ears, then going to see Jagannatha will simply be curiosity mixed with personal sense gratification. I am not saying not to go to the temple to see Jagannath, but Jagannath will see. The pretense of darshana by a person lacking an objective is no darshana at all. Jagannatha as the object of service, different from the world of personal enjoyment. When you go to see Jagannath, do not just see the material world, but attain spiritual knowledge." So, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati applied this dig drishya vichara, or the analysis of the seer and the seen, not only to Bhagavan, but also to those pure devotees who constantly see him, or Krishna, through eyes tinged with the salve of love. Like their worshipable Lord, such pure devotees cannot actually be observed or their activities factually comprehended by worldly perception. Thus he taught, do not try to behold a sadhu by the eyes, but by the ears, by hearing from him. Okay, so the subject of the seer and the seen is a big issue, was and still is a big issue for Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and see, that's why Prabhupada mentions it here, because he's a bona fide disciple of his guru. And he says, therefore the unalloyed intelligence and the mind are merged into the Lord, and thus the living entity does not remain a seer himself, but becomes seen by the Lord transcendentally. When the living entity is directly seen by the Lord dictates to him to act according to his or the Lord's desire. And when the living entity follows him perfectly, the living entity ceases to discharge any other duty for his illusory satisfaction. In his pure unalloyed state, the living being attains the stage of full bliss, labdo pasanti, and ceases all material hankerings. So, therefore, in this purport, Prabhupada also says that perfect intelligence is to render service unto the Lord. So, this is a big difference between academic knowledge and perfect intelligence. Academic knowledge is theoretical. Devotional service is real. So the goal of academic knowledge is to become engaged fully in devotional service without any personal motive and completely being dependent on Krishna. Now that's a position most people do not want to be in, because they cannot be the enjoyer, they cannot be the controller, they cannot be independent and whimsical. They can do whatever they feel like doing. They can't do that. You have to be constantly engaged in the service of the Lord according to the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. You have to be regulated every minute, every second of the day has to be Krishna conscious. So most people will not accept to be the seen. They want to be the seer and the enjoyer. And they're not, they don't have unalloyed intelligence. In other words, intelligence and mind fixed on pleasing the Lord. So therefore you have what's called official devotees, but not genuine devotees. The official devotee is someone who's going through the actions, but with the wrong concept. And the functional, actual devotees understand that they are not the enjoyer, and they're coming to the temple so that Krishna can see them performing devotional service. They don't come to enjoy seeing Krishna with the idea that they're the enjoyer and Krishna is the object of enjoyment. Okay, so it says, but when the mind acts under spiritual urge, it acts wonderfully for going back home, back to Godhead, for a life in complete bliss and eternity. So the devotee's thinking, feeling, and willing, and then acting is only on the basis of pleasing Guru and Krishna, not on what suits the individual's sense gratification. So this is something that everyone can achieve. It's not impossible, but it requires constant vigilance and good association, constant good association. Otherwise, our guru becomes lust, anger, greed, illusion, madness, and envy. They start dictating to us what to do. But we should be dictated to by Krishna. Now, this is a big theme also in Bhagavad Gita. If we look in the 6th chapter, where Krishna says the following. He says, one must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. The 6th chapter, 5th verse. And Prabhupada says in purport, since the mind is the central point of yoga practice, Atma in this context refers to the mind. The purpose of the yoga system is to control the mind and to draw it away from attachment to sense objects. It is stressed herein that the mind must be so trained that it can deliver the conditioned soul from the mire or filth of ignorance. In material existence, one is subjected to the influence of the mind and the senses. In fact, the pure soul is entangled in the material world because the mind is involved with the false ego, which desires to lord it over material nature. Therefore, the mind should be trained so that it will not be attracted by the glitter of material nature, and in this way, the conditioned soul may be saved. One should not degrade himself by attraction to sense objects. The more one is attracted by sense objects, the more one becomes entangled in material existence. So this is a law of nature, right? Very important law of nature. The best way to disentangle oneself is to always engage the mind in Krishna consciousness. The word he in this verse is used for emphasizing this point, that is, that one must do this. One must do this. It is also said, for man, mind is the cause of bondage, and mind is the cause of liberation. Mind absorbed in sense objects is the cause of bondage, and mind detached from sense objects is the cause of liberation. Amrita Bindu Upanishad. Therefore, the mind, which is always engaged in Krishna consciousness, is the cause of supreme liberation. So, Prabhupada says in a letter to a devotee named Madhusudan on January 16, 1970, tricks of the mind or influence of Maya are due to not following regulative principles and not chanting your rounds properly. But when the mind is conquered, one voluntarily agrees to abide by the dictation of the personality of Godhead, who's situated within the heart of everyone as Paramatma. Real yoga practice entails meeting the Paramatma within the heart and then following his dictation. For one who takes to Krishna consciousness directly, perfect surrender to the dictation of the Lord follows automatically. So you notice he mentions the word dictation 3 times at the end of the purport of 6.6, verse 6, chapter 6, verse 6. Then in the next verse, he mentions it even more. He says, actually, every living entity is intended to abide by the dictation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. When the mind is misled by the external illusory energy, one becomes entangled in material activities. Therefore, as soon as one mind is controlled through one of the yoga systems, one should be considered to have already reached the destination. One has to abide by superior dictation. When one's mind is fixed on the superior nature, he has no alternative but to follow the dictation of the Supreme. The mind must admit some superior dictation and follow it. The effect of controlling the mind is that one automatically follows the dictation of the Paramatma or Supersoul, because this transcendental position is at once achieved by one who is in Krishna consciousness. The devotee of the Lord is unaffected by the dualities of the material existence, namely distress and happiness, cold and heat, etc. This state is practical samadhi, or absorption in the Supreme. So how many times did he say dictation in this small, short paragraph? Many, many times, right? So what is the Lord's dictation? Well, in the next verse, in the purport, he says, book knowledge without realization of supreme truth is useless. And then he says, he quotes the verse, Atakshi Krishnanamadi. No one can understand the transcendental nature of the name, form, quality, and pastimes of Sri Krishna through his materially contaminated senses. Only when one becomes spiritually saturated by transcendental service to the Lord are the transcendental name, form, quality, and pastimes of the Lord revealed to him. So this Bhagavad Gita, he says, is the science of Krishna consciousness. No one can become Krishna conscious simply by mundane scholarship. One must be fortunate enough to associate with a person who is in pure consciousness. A Krishna conscious person has realized knowledge by the grace of Krishna because he's satisfied with pure devotional service. By realized knowledge, one becomes perfect. By transcendental knowledge, one can remain steady in his convictions. But by mere academic knowledge, one can be easily deluded and confused by apparent contradictions. It is the realized soul who is actually self-controlled because he is surrendered to Krishna. He is transcendental because he has nothing to do with mundane scholarship. For him, mundane scholarship and mental speculation, which may be as good as gold to others, are of no greater value than pebbles or stones. So, we see that, as Prabhupada says, academic knowledge, one can be easily deluded and confused by academic knowledge. That's why so many people who came to Krishna consciousness but were not able to stay steady in Krishna consciousness because they were too much attracted by academic knowledge and not fixed up in spiritual knowledge. And because of that, their vision was Jagat Darshan, seeing in a material way, themselves as the seer and whatever object they perceive as the seen, rather than understanding that Krishna is the seer and we are the seen, and we should be the object of Krishna's, we should be giving pleasure to Krishna. We should come so that Krishna sees us and And what should he see? He should see a devotee engaged in devotional service, not a person that comes to see him in order to please their eyes and their mind as the seer and enjoyer. Okay, we'll stop right there. Are there any questions?
In case of Mayavad, they just, the seer is just Atma, basically. For them, there's only one entity, there's no.
They merge the three into one. The seer, the seen, and the object of seeing. They merge it all into one. In other words, they destroy it. And what do they see? They don't see anything. They see the light or they see nothing, like the Buddhas. Right? There's another statement in Srimad Bhagvatam 1.12.28. Economic development is never successful because it is illusory. Wow. So, because of material knowledge, we think that economic development is everything, is the most important thing. But practical samadhi, being merged completely and having the mind completely focused on Krishna, is fully satisfied by, when one is fully satisfied by acquired knowledge and realization. In other words, spiritual knowledge and realization of it, not material knowledge and making a lot of money with it. Right? So everybody's always interested to read who's the richest person in the world, right? So sometimes it's Bill Gates, sometimes it's Jeff Bezos, sometimes it's somebody else, right? So everyone's wowed by that, you know. But Prabhupada says economic development is never successful because it is illusory, because it comes and goes. That's why, like for example, Trump was maybe the 100th billionaire in the world, right? Now they say he's down to 400th, right? And then sometimes they say it's Bezos who's the richest guy in the world. Now they say, no, it is Musk. Elon Musk is the richest guy. Or sometimes it's Bill Gates. So you see, it's always fluctuating, you know. And it's not, that's why it's illusory. It's not something permanent. And actually, they're not the richest person. The richest person is Krishna. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. When we come in contact with pure devotees like Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, everything we thought we knew, we suddenly realized it was wrong. And that's unbelievable. I mean, imagine for a person who considers himself a big academic, they come around here and they say, I'm not going back there again because everything I thought I knew, they're saying I don't know. Or they're saying it's useless. So it's a shock to materialistic people, a big shock.